Hello again, Jason. We need you to do another report. Our normal guy dropped out again.
What? Is Jerry not there to cover him? Jason. Howie, I thought you weren't going to be here. Jason, I know you are leaving soon. However, as a favor to me, can you please get this done? Alright. Space. The final frontier. I'm sure every Star Trek fan is jumping in their seat right now. It's one of the first phrases we draw on whenever the talk of outer space arises, along with the notable mission by Neil Armstrong, of course. What is space? The final frontier, our final journey of sorts. Should we even bother in trying to go into space when we have many earthly problems to solve, whether it be thirst and starvation, conflicts, or the fact that sometimes it is quicker for me to connect to my mobile hotspot than it is for me to wait for the school internet to respond? Seriously, what's up with that? Is the time and resources spent on space exploration worth it? To understand that, we need to understand where our fascination with space began. As early as recorded history can recount, humanity has always found fascination looking up at night and watching the expanse that covered the night sky. Early examples include the indigenous Australians, the emu creator spirits being the Milky Way, or the stars in Orion's belt being the brothers fishing in their canoe. The ancient Greeks, with knowledge gathered from neighboring civilizations, used the stars as maps for navigation, with philosopher Plato creating the first model of the universe with the Earth at the center, a theory that held for over a millennium. Even Roman poet Virgil spoke of wonders of space in his book Aeneid, sic itur ad astra, thus swung journeys to the stars. But more on that one later. It wasn't until 1543 that our understanding began to change, with Nicholas Copernicus publishing his belief in the heliocentric system, where the Earth orbited the Sun. Galileo Galilei provided further evidence to this with the help of his invention, the telescope, roughly 1609, although this landed him under house arrest by the Catholic Church for the rest of his life. Other scientists, including Sir Isaac Newton, Kepler, Einstein, all contributed to mankind's understanding of the greater cosmos, but we still needed to get there. Rocketeers have been developing rocket technologies as early as the 1900s, with Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, that was horribly pronounced, I'm sorry, who is considered to be the father of modern astronautics, being one of the first to propose usage of liquid fuel as propellant and using the escaping exhaust as thrust. It's an idea we seem to have stuck with for the better part of a century. It wasn't until 1942, with the Germans and their V-2 rockets reaching the outer edge of space, 100 kilometers into the atmosphere, that we saw actual progress in reaching to the stars. Only problem was, the rockets weren't reaching for the stars, instead reaching for London and trying to bomb the hell out of it. Why didn't we see the rise of more German rockets? Well, yeah. But with Germany's collapse, new feats in space exploration arose, along with the rising space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. It should be noted that the space race's goal was to eventually reach for the stars, but it was done as a distraction to prevent the two powers from sending everyone back to Stone Age via nuclear bombs, instead channeling that national pride and patriotism into flinging things into space. By the early 1960s, the USSR was clearly ahead, being the first to launch a satellite, Sputnik 1, and being first in sending a man into space, albeit forcing him to eject from the craft as he fell to the ground. The Americans needed to pick up their game, and with some inspiring words from the late President Kennedy, NASA and the Apollo program were born. They did also receive an estimated $1 trillion in today's money, but I'm sure Kennedy got them over the line. Tragedies did occur, with Apollo 1's entire group being killed from a fire in the crew cabin, along with many incidences in testing. But after 8 years of the program having developed the largest rocket in human history, having survived the coldness of space, they finally did it.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
After 6 more successful missions and another unlucky run-in, the number 13, the program was shut down due to budget cuts. Was this the end of 20th century space travel? No. Instead, it was decided to aim lower, literally. NASA's goal post-Apollo switched from the Moon to low Earth orbit, developing improved stabilizers and life support to design the first form of interstellar government housing, also known as Skylab. Skylab laid the groundwork, spacework really, for the International Space Station, or ISS. Here, nations from around the globe, through NASA, could develop their scope of the sciences in order to improve their quality of life, one of which was the invention of Velcro. So, every time you must pierce the silence with the horror that is tearing Velcro, you can blame the space race. The Space Shuttle program became the proof that spaceflight technologies can be reusable, acting as a space bus network, servicing the ISS and undergoing hundreds of satellite maintenance missions until the initiative was shut down in 2011. Satellite development and applications increased dramatically over the course of the decades after Apollo. Without them, you wouldn't have GPS, basic communications for rural areas, and the ability to view any street on the globe thanks to Google Maps. The development of low Earth orbit space capabilities has greatly improved society in an ever-globalizing world. However, it has also meant that both the US and the USSR can destroy each other without needing to be on each other's borders. But as history shows, we avoided annihilation, instead deciding to play cat and mouse in the Middle East. 20th century space exploration was the golden age of discovery, conquering the harsh environments of Earth's orbit. They had reached into the final frontier, but much more needed to be done. The earlier 21st century, from 2000 to 2010, proved to be a stagnant time for human space endeavors. Humanity remained in close orbit around the Earth, instead deciding to send out machines to explore for us, aka probes, whilst we tried to resolve internal threats. Now, probes had been sent out before the dawn of the new millennium, with the Voyager probes being one of the most famous of these. However, these probes proved themselves as pioneers in their own right, with some being the first to touch down, or in one case to collide with at breakneck speeds, onto another planetary surface. The Mars rovers have technically been humanity's first contact with the Martian surface, roaming the surface of the planet, scanning the materials that could prove useful. Useful for what, you say? Well, the rover missions tie in with the other venture current space agencies are tackling, the Lunar Gateway project. Yes, we, after 50 years, are going back to the moon. The Lunar Gateway project was the revival of the Constellation program, whose aim was to reach the moon by no later than 2020. However, it was cancelled by the Obama administration. It was the Trump administration, of all presidencies, that rebudgeted NASA with the extra $500 million on top of the original NASA budget to rebrand the efforts made by Constellation for the new Lunar Gateway project for our return to the moon by the year 2024. Swiftly moving away from politics, the Lunar Gateway will act as an orbital platform where the construction of the first lunar bases will commence, where the moon's resources can be mined and exported back for use on Earth. America, once again unable to stop itself from claiming natural resources. The first of these bases will likely to be at the South Pole, with the discovered frozen water deposits acting as a supply of hot water, oxygen, and rocket fuel. But this is merely the beginning. With the completion of these bases, the true meaning behind the name Gateway will come to fruition. Because the moon's gravitational field is a sixth of the strength of the Earth's, it requires much less for rockets to take off and achieve spaceflight. It is with this in mind that the moon bases will serve as a gateway for the first manned missions to Mars. Now, predictions of this date are varied, with some saying 2045, and others like Elon Musk saying we'll get there by 2024 and have Mars Base Alpha completed by 2028. But once there, the knowledge gained by the Mars rovers will help us gain the knowledge required to use the Martian materials to build the structures for future settlements on Mars. Our future expansion to the stars now relies on our ability to make clay. The recent decades have seen the rise of private space industries, with space commerce earning the US approximately $1 billion in the past year. Private companies like SpaceX and Virgin Atlantic are now able to, with the mission of NASA, fund and manufacture their own rocket technologies, with Virgin's tourism initiative and SpaceX's ability to deploy commercial satellites. SpaceX is a curious example where their rate of development has rivaled the development of most national space agencies. Founded in 2002, they nearly were shut down in early development during 2008 after their first prototype failed to launch 3 times. Yet ever since that point, they have exceeded the expectations of many, developing the most powerful operational rocket, the Falcon Heavy, managing to successfully design boosters that can land and be reused, and developing the first American-made spacecraft that can carry astronauts since the closure of the Space Shuttle initiative. These advancements SpaceX have made in improving spaceflight technologies have made spaceflight economically feasible. Maybe Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX, isn't as crazy as others say in his prediction in reaching Mars by 2024, albeit he may not be completely sober after experiencing weed for the first time. Humanity has truly reached a point where we can, if we maintain the political will, go forth and begin to leave our permanent mark on other worlds. We can begin to claim and take hold of the final frontier, developing technologies that improve standards of living and introducing new opportunities for economic growth and prosperity. But how would humanity alter in our pursuit to tame this final frontier? In all our efforts to seize the day and venture forth into the far reaches of space, changing the local regions of space in order to aid our pursuits, how would the cold nothingness of space change us? As we continue to become more developed in the art of spacefaring, society would likely begin to shift with it. With time and developed routines, a flight from the Earth to the Moon would become as commonplace as a flight from Brisbane to Darwin. Low Earth orbit flight paths would soon become developed and managed like the highways of today. The development of space is beneficial, but may simultaneously act as an excuse. Remember the Latin poet I mentioned earlier, Virgil? Well, his book contains the phrase per aspera ad astra, meaning through hardship to the stars. This proved to be the inspiration for director James Gray in the writing of his film Ad Astra, released in 2019. The film sets out to look at how society is likely to progress if we ventured into space. However, the film paints humanity's future still filled with problems and misdealings. And as Gray says, the idea of continually looking out has its benefits, but sometimes the need to look outwards is more about trying to avoid looking inward. One of the greatest problems that humanity will face is the changing of our climate and how we use resources in ensuring we do not destroy our planet. If we can reach Mars or the Moon and colonize it, what reason do we have left to take care of our home planet when we can simply go to another planet? Ad Astra also looks at the psychological impact traveling the great distances of space can have on us, particularly the isolation one might face, not just from the journey, but living on other worlds, and how the great distance between us can ultimately bring us together or tip us over the edge. Nevertheless, humanity will find a way to explore beyond the solar system, with plans to send solar sail probes to Alpha Centauri in the mid-2030s, and have information sent back to us within 24 years of the mission's initiation. What if we do find the elusive green men, or other forms of sentient life? How will our binge-watching of Star Trek, or our constant rewatching of Star Wars aid us in our first contact with other life? Or are we truly alone, the first organic beings to make it to the stars, without cataclysm, and continue forth facing the new challenges that space throws at us alone? We may never know the answer to these questions, at least within the span of several generations. However, thanks to our own creativity, we can continue to encroach on the frontier of space with cautious optimism. So, after all we have achieved so far, and all that we dream about when we turn to the stars, is space the final frontier? Is space the final resting place of mankind? Our final journey? The expanse that is space is so vast that it should be classed as something greater than a frontier, for when we venture further, new frontiers and new challenges emerge from its endlessness. And that is the exact reason why humanity was destined to reach out for the stars, reach out from the safety of their settlements, finding new resources and founding new settlements. It is in our nature to explore, to go further. And with each small step forward we make today, mankind will leap and stride further towards its destiny in the stars. Truly, you were the best of us, Jason. That is why I chose you.